Hello internet users and welcome back to another video. Today I'm once again going to be taking a Pokemon game and turning it into a miserable experience. In the first generation of Pokemon, there are many situations that you can put yourself into that break the game in a way that the developers never expected. In previous videos, I've shown that by having a specific team in a specific room, you can create Pokemon battles that last an obnoxious amount of time, regardless of whether you're trying to win or lose. Up until this point, all of these battles have been against various members of the Elite Four, since you're normally unable to leave their rooms until after a battle concludes. But for this particular video, I'm going to be approaching things in a bit of a different way. Instead of using a trainer battle, I want to create a similar scenario that involves battling wild Pokemon. To set all of this up, I'm going to need to make use of some of the many glitches present in Generation 1. It's widely known by now that several things in the original Pokemon games do not work as they should. I've been showcasing many examples of this for years, but some of the glitches that I haven't used too much are the ones that let you walk through walls. If you're even the slightest bit familiar with the early Pokemon games, then it shouldn't surprise you to hear that there are several complicated methods that can be used to do such a thing. And if you're like me, you might even have fond memories of messing around with them like 20 years ago. Now, explaining the setup for all these glitches is not the focus of this video. If I did that, it would probably be 3 times as long for no good reason. All that you really need to know to follow along with what I want to do here is that Gen 1 is a glitchy game, and has many ways of giving the player the temporary ability to walk through walls. Most of the time, these glitches will last until you either walk into a building, enter into a battle, or until you save and reset the game. As you can imagine, that last one can cause problems if you were to save in a situation that gets you stuck. For example, if you were to put yourself here in this little spot in Celadon, you can potentially ruin the whole save file. In this example, I've placed all of my key items in the PC and left myself with a single Pokemon that doesn't know Surf or Fly. With no way to leave, this entire save can do nothing except pace back and forth and talk to this old man. It should also go without saying that within this limited space, there isn't any way to activate any of these glitches again. There is absolutely nothing the player can do now except start a new game. However, if I were to do this again under some different circumstances, instead of a simple soft lock, I could create something even more obnoxious. Let's go over exactly what this scenario would look like. Imagine this, you're given a Pokemon cartridge and told to get out of whatever situation the save file is in. You hit continue, and find yourself loaded into the Fuchsia City Pokemon Zoo. You're stuck in this tiny enclosed area, unable to walk out. You open up the party, and find that you have a full team of 6 level 100 Mewtwo, all of which are paralyzed. Finally, you decide to check what items are available, and discover that the only thing you have is an old rod. Suddenly, it's pretty clear what you need to do. You have to use this fishing rod on the water next to you in order to enter battles. From there, you need to find a way to make all 6 of these Mewtwo faint, because once the player has no usable Pokemon left, the game will warp them to the last Pokemon Center that was used, thus escaping. At first, that might not sound like the worst thing in the world, but let me explain, because this is actually pretty awful. So first off, you have to remember that the only Pokemon that can be battled here is Magikarp. Unlike later Pokemon games, there is no encounter table for the old rod. It's programmed to always initiate a battle with a level 5 Magikarp whenever it's used on a water tile, no exceptions. At such a low level, it will only know Splash, which as we all know, is a move that does literally nothing. You also need to keep in mind that enemy Pokemon in Gen 1 do not have PP for their moves like the player does, so this means that it'll use Splash infinitely. As you can probably tell from the footage by now, the only possible way for these Mewtwo to take damage is to deplete all of their own moves and eventually faint from the recoil damage of Struggle. The 6 Mewtwo all have the same 4 moves which have had their PP maxed out. These moves are Thunder Wave, Double Team, Flash, and Recover. And because of their paralysis, each turn there will be a 1 in 4 chance that they will not be able to use an attack, wasting the turn completely. On top of that, all of the Mewtwo have the highest HP stat possible, to make fainting take as long as possible. Some of you might recognize that these are the same Mewtwo I've used in a video that ruins Lorelei's battle. Since Mewtwo is the strongest Pokemon in the game, and has access to several high PP moves, it ends up being the best Pokemon in Gen 1 to use for these kind of videos. Alright, so now that I've explained the overall setup, there are still just a few more details that I need to go over. Because the only item in the bag is the old rod, we can't do anything in this location except fish. With the party of Mewtwo having the max amount of PP possible, all of it needs to be wasted in a battle against Magikarp. The first part of this process is simple enough. You just have to mash the A button over and over for each move until they all hit 0. The next part, though, is where things really start to get annoying. When a Pokemon runs out of moves, they are forced to use an attack called Struggle as a last resort option. When it's used, the user will receive recoil damage equal to half of the damage inflicted to the opponent. It's important to note that even if the enemy is knocked out with the attack, the user will still take damage for using it. I mention this because this was not the case in other Gen 1 games like Pokemon Stadium, for some weird reason. As you can see from the footage, Mewtwo is able to take out Magikarp in one hit with Struggle, but because it's level 5 with barely any HP, the recoil is very small. This means that in order to make Mewtwo faint, you're going to have to defeat many Magikarp. As soon as one is taken down, you'll have to open up the inventory and use the old rod again to get into another battle. This process takes as long as the battles do themselves, so that is an enormous amount of extra time added onto the escape. And yes, paralysis can still activate even when you're out of moves, so occasionally you'll still be losing a couple of extra seconds here and there. Anyhow, I think you all can see the point of this setup now. You're stuck here, mindlessly fishing and using Struggle, until eventually you can lose a battle and be transported outside of this cage. And until this happens, the game is pretty much unplayable without first deleting all of the save data. And as all of this happens, the Kabuto in the cage with you just watches on, wondering what it is you're even trying to accomplish. So now, the big question obviously is, how long would it take to escape this scenario? If you have a guess, feel free to pause the video and post it in the comments. So I sat down and timed myself playing through this entire situation, starting the timer the moment I hit continue on the main menu. Of course, because I need to approach this with the mindset of someone trying to escape as fast as possible, I made sure to also go into the options and set the text speed to the fastest settings, and also turn off all of the battle animations. In the end, after battling all of these Magikarp, the escape took a grand total of 3 hours, 28 minutes, and 19 seconds. That's an incredible amount of time compared to what we've seen in previous videos. A person could easily finish an entire Gen 1 playthrough before the Mewtwo finally faint. I'm not even a speedrunner and I've beaten this time before. That about covers everything I wanted to talk about for this video. There isn't much else that I can really add after that. I've made my point. Once you're out of this situation, the game can once again be played like normal. But like I say all the time, there really isn't any big reward for going through these setups other than how amusing it is that the game's mechanics and oversights allow for you to even do it in the first place. Unfortunately, only Gen 1 games can let me make this kind of video. Walking through walls in later generations is mainly something you can only do by using a cheating device. Doing it here in Kanto though, there are certainly a lot of things you can get away with. Fun fact about this setup, if you try to interact with the Kabuto nearby, it will just display an exclamation mark. All of the Pokemon on display in Fuchsia City do the same thing. You are absolutely never supposed to see this, but I guess this is meant to be some kind of placeholder text for them. I don't know. But again, that's about it. I hope you enjoyed. My name is Picasbury, and thanks for watching.